When I lost all that money in a Ponzi scheme, my business partner at the time, his brother helped us out a ton. He went on his 4th tour in Afghanistan and he stepped on an IED and it blew up. And I remember like I was in a phase in my life where I was just partying a lot. I remember going to his funeral and it was in Newark. And I remember they played Amazing Grace on the bagpipes and I just broke down. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? If I died today, how would my funeral be?
Welcome everybody back to the show. We have Rich VanHouten here. Quick background on Rich. I want to see if I get this right? MMA for 15 years.
Yep.
Wrestled at JMU.
Yep.
1-0 professional against Doug Miller.
Doug Miller, yep.
TKO knockout.
Yep.
In the 3rd round.
First round.
First round. Really? I was just watching that fight this morning, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Corners, #1 ranked women's flyweight champ, Valentina Shevchenko,
Yep.
was just a Ultimate Fighter coach. And as of recent, a father.
Yes.
Oh, and the owner of CULTR. So you've been a fighter for 15 some odd years.
Yeah, I mean, I've been training martial arts my whole life. So I'm 43 years old now. I wrestled in college, but I didn't start wrestling until high school. Prior to that, I was doing karate. I was boxing. I had a heavy bag in my room since I was a little kid and just loved martial arts. So, you know, I would say probably the old school martial arts movies, Bruce Lee's, Jean-Claude Van Damme's, they like inspired me and always just loved fighting. I always wanted to be around it, always wanted to be involved with it. When there were fights, I would always be in the middle. So,
Were you started training boxing and karate when?
When I was young, probably like 6, 7 years old. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Did your parents get you into that, or you wanted?
Yeah. No, I mean, I wanted to do it. Always wanted to do it. So I have photos of me like in karate gis, like in uniforms, like
A youngin'?
since I was a kid. Yeah.
Did your dad push you to do that sort of stuff?
No, I just loved it.
Was he a fighter?
Nope.
So you went out, started boxing, did karate.
I was the smallest out of the group of all our friends, and one of my friend's fathers, guy Jim Burt, he played for the New York Giants. He was nose guard. He pro bowler, 2-time Super Bowl ring. He was an absolute savage, and he called me a Jack Russell Terrier, but just because I was always feisty and always like wanted to fight. And he used to have us in his house, like he would coach our little league baseball team, but he would have us in his house. He would sit on his couch and he'd have us just wrestle and fight, and he would just like be entertained. Some of the kids would like cry and be like, I'm sick, I want to go home. Like they weren't into it, and I just loved it.
What took you so long to get into wrestling?
We didn't have it where I grew up. So we had it in high school, but we didn't have it in like local rec. So I didn't get into it until my freshman year.
But you always wanted to.
Yeah.
Were you immediately good?
Yeah, I took to it. Like, I mean, I was natural with it. So my freshman year, first time, I was a 103 pounder, and I started varsity my first year of wrestling.
No shit.
So I was like a 500 wrestler. I think I was like 8-8. But the love of winning and the hate of like losing and feeling that loss, I quit every other sport and I just wrestled year round.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you still training other martial arts?
At the time, just wrestling.
Just wrestling.
Yeah. Just wrestling.
You go on. Did you place in what state were you in?
I was Jersey.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I did 7th, 8th. Like I was like 7th, 8th. Northern Highlands.
Oh no shit! I went to Bay Valley.
And then went to James Madison in Virginia, Division I.
Yeah.
Wrestled for 2 years, year and a half, and then just decided it wasn't for me.
So you wrestled freshman and then a little bit of sophomore year.
Yeah.
Is that when you started to transition into really training MMA?
When I was coming home, I mean, I enjoyed college a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was coming home and doing jiu-jitsu. At the time, there was only like one school in all of Jersey. It was North Jersey. In what town was it? Whatever. It was up in North Jersey. And I met like JT Torres. He was 15 years old. He was a blue belt at the time. So I was training with him. And I just fell in love with martial arts. So I was boxing and I was trying to find a way. I was working construction. I was a project manager. And I wanted to do something different. So I found a franchise that popped up on like an email, said LA Boxing. There's a franchise. So I was like, oh, what is this? Let me check it out. So I flew out to LA to check it out. It was like this hole-in-the-wall boxing gym. And Tito Ortiz's boxing coach, this guy Perillo, you know, from Ruka, Cheeto's coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luke Rockhold's coach, he was like teaching the bad classes. So I'm like, yo, this is so dope. You have pro fighters teaching classes to everyday people. So I'm like, I have to do this. So I bought the franchise. I was like 22 years old at the time. I like begged, borrowed, and stole. I had a business partner at the time, and we opened up on the waterfront in Hoboken. They gave me a lease that I don't even know. I didn't even have a business plan, and they gave me a shot and gave me a lease down on the waterfront.
Wait a minute. You opened up your first gym at 22.
By the time it opened, I have a story. I mean, I could write a book on this. I lost all my money that we had for that gym in a Ponzi scheme.
Well, we got time, so let it rip.
Yeah, so I lost all my money for that gym. We signed the franchise agreement. We paid, I think, 25 grand for like the rights for Hoboken. And we started construction, and I got caught up in this Ponzi scheme from a kid I grew up with, his father. And we put like 100 grand into it. And at the time, that was the money we needed for the rest of the construction.
Right.
And we were leasing the equipment, like the ring and the heavy bags and all that stuff. And right when construction was started, we lost it all.
Wait, hold on. Was the Ponzi scheme related to the gym or something completely separate?
Completely separate.
Oh, you just had your money there.
We took our money, we're like, let's put it into this. And the investments we were expecting to return were like crazy. So we're like, we'll be able to do so much more with the gym, so much more marketing, PR, like we'll be able to like just run the gym and not have any other, outside jobs. So we like jumped in on this, never got paid for it. The feds got involved. Like it was crazy. It was a whole thing. But yeah, at the time I was like, man, I just need to get this open. So begged, borrowed, and stole to pretty much get it open. And I knew once we did, it was going to be a success. I was just so passionate about it. And I knew like it was a vision that I had that I was like, this is going to work. And whatever it takes, I'm going to make it happen.
So hold on, this is crazy. So your $100,000, that's probably every penny I had at this point, right? Do you talk to this friend? Like, are you trying to communicate with him?
He moved to Miami. This is crazy. So he moved to Miami, dipped out. He's like in the elevator, like with Michael Vick's brother.
Yeah.
And they like, I guess, smoking pot, like playing video games together. And Michael Vick at the time was in jail for the
This is all happening at the same time.
Right? Yeah. So I'm calling his dad, like, I need my money. And he's like, don't worry. I'm handling Michael Vick's money while he's in jail. He's like, we're going to sell one of his watches. I'm like, dude, don't tell me where you're getting the money from. Just like, send me my money. Like, I need to pay the contractors. I have the contractors beating down my neck. Like, I have a lease. We're going to had to start paying rent on the waterfront. Like, it wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
Like, I needed to get the construction done. So a lot of pressure. And then like the feds got involved. It was all over ESPN about this guy. Like, it was crazy. Yeah.
Where was he putting the money?
Who knows, man? He like disappeared. So yeah, I lost that. A lesson. I mean, definitely a lesson I learned.
I feel like when you're young, when it is almost too good to be true, you probably should take a step back and realize that. But it's
I think
hard
when
at
you're
22,
young,
23.
you can take those risks and you can afford losing it, even though you can't afford losing it. But I feel like when you have a lot more responsibility and like family and a wife and all that, and you're older, like you can't take those risks.
Yeah. So did you get any of the money back?
I think we got like $3,000, if that,
What?
out of $100,000. Yeah.
How did you scrape money by now to just like now working a real job?
We took like a ton of loans out.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran my credit into the ground just to get open. But once we opened, we were a success. Like we were the only gym around that did like real boxing, authentic Muay Thai, and had jiu-jitsu, and like had a ring. So we were like hosting fights. Like we blew up pretty quick on the waterfront because there was nothing like it around. There was no middle ground. There's either like hardcore boxing gyms or Taibo kickboxing. And we are like the bridge that like kind of like, or it was like right in the middle there, like that sweet spot where it was like, you could be an everyday person wanting to just get a cardio workout, but you can also learn how to fight from pros. And like I was able to help fighters make some money, on the side, like teaching classes, doing privates, and being able to train all day. So.
And I'm assuming that you've pulled inspiration from when you said you were at a gym getting taught how to train from a professional fighter, and now you want to go and do that for somebody else.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're 23 at this time. You're not a black belt yet, right?
No, I was a white belt. I was just like,
you just started.
I was training jiu-jitsu, but I wasn't training consistently enough, and I was doing more no-gi. And I literally started taking fights because we're a fight gym and promoters would hit us up, do you have any fighters? So I'd be like, yeah, like
Me?
I'll fight.
shit.
And amateur fighting back then, it wasn't as popular. So like, I mean, I went like probably 8 months to a year, like not getting a fight or people backing out. Like, so it took a little bit longer, but
Well, okay, because I want to back up to you being a white belt in jiu-jitsu, running a gym, trying to fight amateur professional. How are you prioritizing your time to get your black belt? Like that's not an easy thing to accomplish.
so I got up to, I think, purple belt with like 3 stripes. I was competing as a blue belt. I mean, this was a long time ago in the beginning of the school. I was still training a lot. Like once we opened, I was training every day. And then I got my black belt because I ended up like having to separate myself from the gym and like take time for myself. So when I was a purple belt, I was like, you know what? I need to go find the best and I need to get out of my gym space so I don't get sidetracked. And I just need to train for me. So like I would leave every day and I would train every afternoon at Marcelo Garcia's in the city.
Every day.
So I would drill with like Gianni Grippa for an hour before practice. I would take the pro training and then I would come back at night and train again. So I was just like took that time to kind of like train and get my black belt. And I was like, I'm gonna get my black belt from him, whatever it takes. And it took me like probably 5-6 years of going pretty much 5 days a week.
That is insanity. That you took 5-6. I mean, but 5-6 years to get your black belt is relatively
Well,
short.
I was a purple belt before that. So like
okay.
I've spent probably 10 years prior to that training on like not consistent, you know?
So it took you a short amount of time to go to purple to black than it did from white to purple, just because you weren't as consistent.
Probably about the same.
Really?
Yeah, probably about the same.
Were you competing? Because I know you were a no-gi brown belt champ.
I competed as a blue belt at the Worlds, and like small tournaments here and there.
I read somewhere online you were a no-gi world champ brown belt.
Brown belt, yeah.
And which division? Or like which federation?
IBJJF.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
No shit. What year was that?
It's probably like 6 years ago.
Recently?
I gotta see maybe like.
Oh, I didn't realize you were
Maybe
still
8 years ago.
competing.
It was a while ago.
And then when did you get your black belt?
5 years ago.
Got it. And when you get your black belt, now you're still owning the gym. I'm assuming, was that like okay, I got it, now I have to run my business, or did you still compete?
No, I was. I mean, once you're a martial artist, you just like and you train. You want to train all the time. I just kind of. It was. The pandemic probably was a little bit after. I just got back to like I just went through phases. You know, like I was like, all right, I want to get my black belt. I got my black belt. I'm like, all right, let's get back into like MMA again more. And let's get back into like training, more striking and weight training. And I just focused so much on jiu-jitsu that I just like needed like a little break from it.
Okay. So I'm assuming jiu-jitsu is your main martial art as a fighter.
I don't know. I would say like my strong point is being like a mixed martial artist. So like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing, more of a boxer than a kickboxer. I do like throwing kicks, but I think just the blending it all together. So I've spent such a long time doing all of it. So I think I think people categorize MMA a little bit too much, where it's like jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing. And I think it's its own sport and you got to be good at everything.
Right. Okay. So if you were to build a fighter and you have 2 martial arts to pick, which ones are you choosing?
Oh man, that's tough. Probably boxing and wrestling.
I think everybody says that.
Yeah.
Why?
I just think boxing causes more damage. You know, you see more knockouts with boxing, and I think wrestling is just so dominant. You know, you're up against the wall wrestling, right? So, or just on top, like you see Bo Nickel, a guy who's just a dominant wrestler, just wrestled, and now he's like shooting up to probably title contention soon. Like, you know, like maybe 2 or 3 more fights, and he's like right there. So dominating guys, high level guys.
Yeah. You just said that it's a different sport. Do you notice some wrestlers have a hard time transitioning their folk style wrestling to MMA wrestling?
I think the wall wrestling is different because you can't really use your hips as much. Like you can't sprawl. It's a different pressure. There's different takedowns, but you know, a wrestler is a wrestler. So once you get used to using it and doing it, you know, you can adjust pretty quick.
So you learned that pretty quickly. You had how many amateur fights before your first professional?
I only had 1 amateur fight. A bunch were like falling out, and I was just like, I'm ready to go pro.
Okay. Now, talk me through preparation for the pro fight versus amateur. Was it any different?
No, I mean, I was always just training.
Yeah.
I think I was just so like, I think it just consumed me so much, and I was running the gym that I couldn't really run the gym when I was training.
Right.
Because I was like, I mean, I got to outwork them. I got to outwork them. So I just like was constantly training.
Yeah.
So after my first fight, I wanted to continue going. Like I had people wanting to manage me and take me to the UFC and all that. I just had like injury after injury. Then I lost my hearing, which like screwed me up a lot. I couldn't be in the gym for like 3 months.
How'd you lose your hearing?
Sudden hearing loss. It was just like a freak thing.
Out of nowhere.
Get hit. I was hitting pads, boxing, and my eardrum just popped. And I was like, it'll come back. So it's like when you're in an airplane and it pops. So my right eardrum just like popped, and it was constant ringing. And at the time I was fighting, I didn't have health insurance. I was running the gym, and I wasn't making that much money at the time. So I had like clinical care. Like I went to Newark and had these like young kids like working on me. So I had like steroid injections and a bunch of stuff, and I got maybe 10% back. So I still have constant ringing in my right ear.
Still?
So, yeah. So like when we do rolls in jiu-jitsu, I couldn't do them because
Why?
I'd be like super dizzy. I wouldn't know where I was. Like I'd have to hold on to the wall. So I had really bad vertigo. So when I first came back to the gym, I couldn't be around noise. I didn't know where like sound was coming from. I was just like super dizzy. So like it was pretty like depressing, and it was pretty like hard to be around the training. So it kind of like sidelined me, and then I just like refocused to coaching and running the gym.
So that really was the reason why you didn't continue, because you only had one professional fight, which you dominated, and then you stopped.
Yep. I tore my ACL. I had a messed up neck from jiu-jitsu. So I from wrestling. So like C6, C7. And then the hearing was like the last straw.
Maybe that was God's plan.
Yeah.
Now,
think
if
so.
you right now, if you like clog this ear, can you hear from that one?
No. So
Holy
when my wife's
shit.
talking to me and I don't want to hear anything, I just put this head in the pillow. I can't hear you. Can't hear you. I'm sorry.
So I said a Kai fighter.
Yeah. So you hear me all the time being like, what?
can't hear
What'd you
shit.
say? What'd you say? What'd you
Yeah.
say?
Speaking of ears, man, this guy has drained my Kai fight ear how many times? Like 100?
Maybe 20, maybe 30. Guys like, you at the gym? You at the gym?
Yeah.
You at the gym?
I've
You
had
got
to
a
buy
needle?
so many needles. People are like, why do you have so many needles? I'm like, don't worry about it. And just walking out with vials of blood. And they still look like shit. So I don't know. Anyway.
I think they look good, bro.
I think
they
they
look like a wrestler, and it's still
a sign of toughness.
not
I
too
guess.
bad.
It's not too bad. Like I don't walk around like, holy shit, that guy fights. Because if I did, then I have to really fight. And I'm like, all right, I have enough
You're a
to
tough
show that
guy.
I can.
You're a tough
yeah,
guy.
you
You
can do
can
something on
handle
the map.
yourself.
But that's, I mean, I like you just said, I obviously don't train to fight professionally, but I appreciate the sport so much. And training for me is almost like paying homage to how hard these guys work. Right? If I'm on a mat 3-4 times a week and I could bust my ass for a session and give these guys good work, that's all I can ask for, you know?
There's also nothing more therapeutic
100%.
for you mentally than to train, right? It's flight or fight.
Yeah.
So like I was training some high level celebrities and people that were dealing with some mental stuff, or just like wanting to like shut off their brain because they have so much pressure and so much stuff on them. And we started off boxing, and then we went right to jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And it's something that they fell in love with because like I said, like you can't think about anything else except for you're protecting yourself right there and surviving. And so, and then the endorphins afterwards, like it's like such a rush, you know?
insane.
So
I think jujitsu, among other martial arts, is that feeling only because it's so constant. Like it's an 8-minute, 10-minute round and you're getting smothered and almost feels like you're drowning out of water. And it's so like unexpected, I feel. Like getting punched is a little more like, okay, you see it coming, doesn't feel great. But for whatever reason, that feeling of just constant exhaustion with the jiu-jitsu roll is unlike any other feeling, you know, and you really can't stop it. You know what I mean?
and you have to learn how to breathe through it and control your pace.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if you just go like balls out, you're gonna gas out. You're gonna get tired. And then like the biggest fear I think for grapplers or for fighters, and for me, like when I was fighting, was to gas out and fatigue.
Yeah.
Because you could be the most talented in the world, but if you don't have the stamina, you're gonna get smashed.
And it's funny because stamina, jiu-jitsu wise or grappling wise, the only way to get better is grappling.
Yeah, people are like, I got to get better in shape before I come back. It's like the only way to get in wrestling, jiu-jitsu shape, is to wrestle or do jiu-jitsu. You want to be a good runner, you got to run. Like,
Listen, take a runner, put him on a mat, and in a minute, that dude will feel like, holy shit, I have
but
zero
take a
cardio.
grappler and put him make him run. You know, I'm sure they'll be all right, but they might. It's
I think it translates over a little bit.
It's different
though.
breathing.
Yeah, it is different breathing. And I think like martial arts again is, I saw Dana White talking about it. It really is taking the red or blue pill in the matrix. Like when you decide to train for the first day, the whole world opens up to be like, holy shit, I am so at risk. If somebody grabbed me that knew what they were doing on the streets, I'm fucked. Like he's killing me. And I think that's the biggest difference in jiu-jitsu versus other martial arts. You go spar boxing, you get your ass kicked a little bit. You can walk away saying, you know what, on the streets, I'd beat that guy's ass.
Yep.
You get tapped out 5 times in jiu-jitsu, you relate that to the streets, you're dead. Yep. Like he killed you.
And I think that's why it's such a fast growing sport, because people like are like, I got to get better at this.
That
like,
you're scared to get better. You have to get better.
And then you're like dissecting what happened and why, and then how, and then next thing you know, you're on YouTube. Next thing you know, you're buying a Danaher DVD. You're like, wait, how did I just spend $500?
It's almost like out of fear. And I'm sure you've felt it too, where like, as a grown man, I've almost been brought to tears walking out of a jiu-jitsu class. Like, I am defenseless against these dudes. I just got my ass kicked over and over and over again. And it's one of the worst feelings in the world.
You have to train without an ego, but your ego is what makes you better. Yeah. Because you're like, man, I don't want to have an ego on the mat. I want to be like a good training partner. I want to push. If I get tapped, it's okay. I'm going to learn from it, yada, yada. But your ego inside is like, man, I can't let that happen again. I got to get better.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it pushes you to keep showing up. So I think that's the biggest lesson with martial arts is the discipline of it. Like if you want to get your black belt or you want to get better, you just have to show up every day. And it's the same with anything else, work, right? Like if you want to get to the next level, it's not like go hard and then stop, go hard and then stop. It's like just show up every day. Some days you're not going to feel it. Other days you're going to feel great. It doesn't matter how you feel. It's just like, just show up and train. Right. Show up and train.
I think that is the difference between going to the gym and training, because everybody always says, oh, getting to the gym is half the battle. All right. I know plenty of people that go to the gym.
Don't do anything.
Go to the gym, they're on their phones. They walk out, they say, I don't know why I don't look good. Because you're not training. But fight or flight kicks in jiu-jitsu or boxing or any martial art, and you're forced to train. So that is a little more applicable to just say, just show up, because endorphins kick in, and that hour session, you're going to get a piece of that you learned something.
And your phone's away. Like you're on the mats, like you don't have pockets. Like when I go to the gym to lift, my ADD kicks in. I'm like looking at my phone. Next thing you know, I'm like, an hour went by. I did like 4 sets of something. I'm like, all right, I got to go home. You know, like, So I think that aspect too, like you just unplug from the world and you're focused on that. You learn the technique and then you start training, and the hour goes by like that, or the hour and a half. You know?
It's easier. Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with focus. I definitely do. I have a phone addiction for sure. And even at the gym now, I feel like I'm slacking. I'm like, dude, if I put my phone on airplane mode, I get a way better workout than not. And that's why training jiu-jitsu is like like you said, it's your escape from the reality a little bit. Let's transition again. You are cornering Shevchenko now for the past 4 years. I guess first question I have, male versus female fighters, what are the major differences?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe depth. But now, I mean, there's a lot more female fighters coming on the scene. To be honest, man, I think females are just so tough. Really? Like I have a female fighter in my gym now, the Spanish girl. She's probably the toughest person on the team.
Which one?
Like Anna, the Spanish girl. Like she's just, what's that?
At CULTR?
Yeah. Venezuelan girl. She's like just used to fighting. So like, she's just built different, you know? And I see it now, like my wife, like having a baby and going through what she's going through. I'm like, damn, I don't know if I could do that, you know? And it's like, oh, you've been a fighter, you've been doing this. And I'm like, yeah, this is just different, you know? Like, I don't know. It's just some women are built different. They're tough, man.
I wonder if that's like biologically they have to be tougher, because men on average are bigger, stronger, faster. So like that's like just their adaptation to just be tougher.
Maybe. I mean, I always would pamper women, I think, in training. And that stopped quickly when I saw how tough women were. Like when it came to jiu-jitsu, when it came to Muay Thai, when it came to boxing, like I'd be like, oh, don't hit them so hard, or don't do that. And it's like, you see, they turn up and they show up and they train and they push it. So especially with Valentina, I mean, she's probably the toughest, mentally tough person I've ever met. Like she's just on a different level. You bring Shevchenko to CULTR. Does she beat up most of the dudes there? Yeah. That's crazy. She doesn't train with females, like for the most part, like just because, you know, I don't know. She's just that she's that strong and that good and that fast.
It's interesting you said that you used to kind of pamper and you'd be hesitant to train. Your fighters and you get on a mat with a girl, you going full speed?
Depends on the level, but probably
Yeah.
not full speed, but you don't want to disrespect them and not give them a look. So you're going to go with them. You're just not going to like smash them, like
Right.
you know who you're training with. I think as you're more experienced, it goes with anyone. Like I'm not going to go with a beginner and just like smash them, like if it's a girl that's really strong and she's pushing the pace, I'm going to match that,
Yeah.
So I think like as a coach and as someone who's been experienced, anyone that's experienced, like it's always better to go with someone experienced because they can control it. People that aren't as experienced, they don't know how to control it. They just know like one speed.
Yeah, and I
most
think,
part.
like you said, it has nothing to do with female or male. If you're experienced and I'm not, you're not going to go balls to the wall and kick my ass in a training session.
But if you're going balls to the wall at me and I have to slow you down, then I'm going to pick it up.
They
you
just
know?
slow me down a little bit. Yeah. Talk me through women versus men train. Are they more disciplined? Like, is there any differences in your approach to a fight camp? Let's say.
I don't think so.
No.
No. I mean, right now I have one female fighter and besides working with Valentina, and I mean, I've learned so much just from her and being around her. So it's tough to tell, I think it's just like if you're a fighter, you're a fighter.
Yeah.
Some people are born with it and they're just built different. Some people just have a love for it and they're doing it and they're just super athletic and talented. So you have just like different athletes, but as a coach, you need to know how to cater towards each of those individual fighters. Like what drives them, what stirs them, what gets them going. Like what motivates them.
Do you think that's what's helping you stand out as a coach? Is like you treat people as individuals, even with your culture fighters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say like that was a good experience too. Like I had at the Ultimate Fighter, right? I connected with the fighters pretty quickly, just because I wanted to know where they all came from different countries. They don't have their teammates with them. They don't have their coaches with them. They don't have contact with the outside world. There's no phone. There's no TVs. There's no books, right? No internet whatsoever. And they're living in a house with the guys that they're going to be fighting. They have to stay close to weight, so they can't like really indulge in food. And they're fighting once, twice, maybe, within 4-week period.
This sounds miserable.
So, crazy. It's craziest experience. So I tried to connect with them on like, hey, how do you typically warm up? How do you feel without your coach being here? Like, and like stir into them, ask them a lot of questions to get to know them. So I think like one thing I've always learned is the more questions you ask people and the more that you get to know about them, the more you can help them.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best thing that's helped me as a coach, like understanding your fighters, understanding them individually and like what drives them, what stirs them. And then, just like communicating with them.
I notice, only because I know you tap into your faith a lot for yourself and then your fighters. Was that consistent for you your entire life, or did fighting kind of bring out faith for you?
I think fighting kind of brought it out because it was like you need it, like you're by yourself a lot. You really need to like find a bigger meaning too. Like, why am I doing this? And like, find your purpose. And I think like, we go through phases in our life, and I think I was just maturing and I was getting over like the chasing women partying scene. And I was just like, man, I need to find more purpose in my life. And I think that's kind of like when faith came in, and it's helped me find that purpose. And now I really feel like I'm like living in purpose and in my vision, like what I'm called to do.
What would you say your purpose is?
To help people. And I love coaching. So I feel like that's my avenue. I feel like I've been blessed with that gift. And so I was just leaning in on that. And now it's, just trying to help people.
Pushing is the wrong word. Do you try to advise your fighters to have some sort of faith?
I think people need a bigger purpose and they need to understand a why. And without faith or something higher than yourself, it's very hard to find that. So I never push anything. I try to live by example. And if people have questions or they're into it or they want to learn about it, like I'm there for them. I'll pray for them. I'll give them books. I'll communicate with them. I'll tell my story or why I believe what I believe. But I'm never trying to push anything on anyone. And I respect, like I have a lot of Muslim people in my gym, and I I gave them a key to do Ramadan training.
That's
you know,
awesome.
like they're not my faith, but it's not that I don't respect them or what they believe. You know, whether whatever your faith is, you know, like I respect it. So
You said something really profound, is that like as a fighter you almost need faith, right? Like you're put and pushed to the edge, and it's like you don't know what else or where else to turn. And I think that's the issue nowadays with lack of faith, whatever, like you said, doesn't matter the religion in this country, especially because I don't think people are pushing themselves to that edge enough transparently as men and women. They live very sedentary lifestyles. They have very, I guess, basic run of the mill lives. And back in the day when you were forced to, you know, fight for your life and things like that, you had to, you know, believe in something a little bit bigger. And that's why I think training is so important for the average man, right? If you're not faced with life or death every single day, at least put yourself there once in a while to feel that feeling, because the greater good is then you're finding that purpose and you wake up a little more excited than the other guy.
100%. I think as we mature and we get older, we realize what's important, right? And I think when we waver, like we don't know what to believe, what we're doing, where we're going, we're always just kind of like going with the flow. And I think you just, you know, everybody's low is different, and everyone's breaking point of where they need God or they need to really deep down like dive like what's next, or what am I doing this for, or why am I doing this, who am I doing it for. I think that's when it's like, all right, like I need something bigger.
Those questions that you're asking out loud right now, did you ever, or can you reflect on actually sitting down and asking those questions, or do you kind of feel like it just progressively happened for you?
It progressively happened. I mean, when I lost all that money in a Ponzi scheme, right? My business partner at the time, his brother helped us out a ton. He also invested in the Ponzi scheme. He went on his 4th tour in Afghanistan, and he stepped on an IED and it blew up. So he passed away. And I remember like I was in a phase in my life where I was just partying a lot, and I was just drinking, and I was sleeping around with girls, and it was just like a lot of empty relationships. And I was a fun time, but I wasn't like a loyal friend. And I didn't feel like a loyal person at the time. I didn't feel like a great leader. I didn't feel like a great boss. Like I just felt like I was just like living my life selfishly. And I remember going to his funeral, and it was in Newark, and the mayor was there. They had like jets. They had all the like, it was huge, like the police officers, military. And I remember they played Amazing Grace on the bagpipes, and I just broke down. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? If I died today, how would my funeral be? Would it be honorable? Would people be like, this guy was a good time, or this guy looked out for me, he helped me out, he was there when I needed him? And it just like made me take a deep dive in myself. And I remember going that Sunday to a bar in the city. We were watching football, and I was like looking around. I think I was like messing around with 2 of the waitresses at the time. And like, I was just like, I was sober that day, and I was looking around. I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like everyone looked so stupid when I like removed myself from it. And so I just like started making like little changes, and God just like kept revealing himself in different people.
Different people, you said?
Yeah.
As in he put different people in your life?
Yeah.
Can you name a couple that come to your mind?
Like I was going to a church in the city. I had a mug, and I came down, I was teaching a 6 a.m. boxing class, and I was talking to a guy who just joined, and I was like, you're in a band? Oh, what band? He's like, oh, just like some church in the city. I was like, Hillsong? He's like, yeah. So then I would teach 6. I would have a 30-minute break. I would teach at 7:30. So I'd walk him back every morning. And he'd be like, hey, like you just need to set boundaries in your life. And he would just like start planting seeds. Hey, just like don't bring women back to your apartment for now, you know, like set boundaries for your life. So like it was just like little things like that just revealed like God was looking after me and like putting people in my life. And I just felt like it just kept happening, you know, so.
It's funny that you really could, like I asked that question without preparation, obviously, and immediately the man comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Like it's such a crazy stamp on your brain, that one person that changed and transitioned.
There was multiple. I mean, I had a guy come in, and he signed up for the gym, and he wrote like his occupation. He was a pastor. And I was like, oh man, let me waive the enrollment fee, man.
Oh, so you were searching at this point?
No. He came in and he was a pastor. And so I was
but I'm saying
you're joining a church. Like
Yeah.
you're starting a church here in Hoboken. So he was starting a church. And at the time I was like, do you need a spot? He's like, yeah. So on Sundays I would take the heavy bags down at my old gym, and we would host like a church. We'd have like 30 people come in on Sundays at my old gym on the waterfront.
Okay,
So
yeah. So you were searching for God at this point though, like 5, 10
yeah,
years
I
ago.
mean, at that point, I was already like in,
Yeah. Okay,
and
gotcha.
it was just like God just guiding me along the journey.
Yeah.
You know.
I think, like you said too, is a big point is that you became obsessed, maybe is the right word, with God and your faith, but you don't force it on other people. You lead by example, and that's just you can pinpoint the time that it transitioned, and that you are way more at peace and understand your purpose now than you did 10 years ago or 20 years ago when you were living the life of partying and girls and nonsense.
Yeah, I think it's just stressful life, you know. It's stressful, and I think
Hear you, man.
once you can communicate with people, once you can feel like you're doing the right thing, you can live at peace with it. So I feel like it's a journey. I mean, I struggle with it still, you know, like not struggle with it, but I always have to just remind myself like who's in control of my life, you know.
Yeah, I feel like when you're young doing dumb things, you wake up with a lot of regret and you're like, what am I doing?
I mean, yeah, yeah.
I come to that conclusion a lot, and then I repeat the cycle.
And I think everybody has like a point in their life where there's like everybody's sick of it. What's that one guy that's like famous for like sleeping with everybody as like the loaded guy that
Dan Bilzerian.
yeah, he just like posted something about like it'd be
He wants to
better
find
in
love or something like that.
Yeah, it'd
I'm
be
like,
better
dude.
in a relationship than to like he was like saying he slept with like 4 girls a day every day.
Dude, you have to
what?
try. That's a job at that point.
That's crazy.
Listen,
But he had women like on his boat, like he just like
well,
had
he reached the
women
point
around.
now where women were doing it for. He said he claims he never paid. That women were doing it now just to gain kind of clout to be with him. But that's a full time job. Like he admits his addiction to like sex pills and like all he would do.
I think that's a cop out too. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm a sex addict. Like I cheat on my wife, or I'm a sex addict. I
Yeah.
can't be in a relationship." I mean, men are men. Like
100%.
you're gonna be whatever you feed. You know. So it's like I remember hearing like the grass is greener on the other side, and this was one of the messages. Like every time I started going to church, I felt like the message were to me, and like some things were planted on me, and it was like the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. And I was just like, man, if I just watered my relationship and nourished like those, they would flourish. But I was just like, nope, this chick's hot. This one, or whatever it was. And it's like, you can say that about your job. You could say that about any relationship, friendships, your relationship with your parents, like family members. Like if you're not watering them and you're like trying to water everything else around it, it's like, you're not going to flourish. Like you got to water it, continue to water it. And, I also heard like, you know, people say, "Oh, I fell out of love with this person." Like you choose to love that person, you know? So like I think it's a choice. Like I can choose this to love my wife and like honor her, or I can like choose to be like, "Oh man, like maybe it's better to be single again," or maybe it's like, you know, but it's like no, like reel it back in. Like this is what I choose. Like I choose to love my wife. I choose to be in this relationship. I choose to like nourish this. So
Do you think do you think fighting has helped you with those sort of conscious decisions to be like, hey, because fighting is like you said, it's discipline, it's just showing up every day. So you have to wake up and say, I don't care how I feel about my relationship or about training. I have to go and do it. I don't care how I feel about that individual today. I'm gonna wake up and be grateful that they're in my life. Do you think people sort of lack that?
100%. I think there's difference between motivation and discipline, right? Like you could be motivated for like a phase and you can go to the gym, you can try keto diet, you can do this, you can do that. But I think as a martial artist, you understand and appreciate the discipline. That's why it's like to get your black belt, like you have to be disciplined to do it. Like to get good at anything, you just have to show up. So I think with my marriage, I just have to show up every day. Like my wife needs me. We have the baby. Like I got to show up for her. You know, I got to go help her out. I got to go do this. Like I can't just disappear, you know? So I think it's just like whatever it is, we need to just show up.
I think so too is, and I'm assuming, right? Because you're a competitive guy and jiu-jitsu is very competitive because you're chasing that next belt. But even when you get the black belt, you got to keep it and be better than everybody else. The comparison of like you were in one of the best rooms debatably in the country, right? With Marcelo.
Yeah.
Is that sort of how you now structure your life where you want to be around the best husbands and fathers?
I think we need role models and we need people to look up to. So I have people in my life in different areas of my life that like I look up to for things, right? Like a friend who's a father and married, like who I look up to, I'll talk to him, you know, like I'll call him. when it comes to like gyms and businesses and like and that I'll have somebody else for that. You know,
Right.
when it comes to coaching, I'll call other coaches who have a lot of pro fighters, like, you know, so I can just be able to talk to them in different areas, you know, because
Right,
everyone
right.
has different expertise. So yeah, I mean, we need people to lean on because sometimes I find it really hard. Like as a boss and a coach and a leader, I feel like I'm always pouring out, and sometimes I'm just always emptying my cup. And then
Yeah.
like I come home and like I don't have enough for my wife, or I'm just exhausted and I'm just taking on everyone's burdens. I'm just like continuing to push, and sometimes I'm just like exhausted. So like you got to make sure that you're feeding, you're pouring into your cup too, or someone's pouring into your
Someone is,
cup.
right. Yeah, because again, people look at you at CULTR as like you're that guy. If you walked in that gym at 6 in the morning, like, I'm tired, man. I don't want to be here today. You know what I'm doing? Especially me, I'm walking right out. I'm out. I'm tired too, man. Let's go take a nap. I'm out of here.
Yep.
And like you come with an energy that's like you gotta put on the smiley face sometimes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I'm great. I could walk out of the gym and not feel that great, but for that day you had to put it on for us. And I think it is a cycle because then I do the same thing. I said, man, I bet Richie doesn't want to be here today, but he's doing it for me. So what do I have to do now? I have to go back, and when I'm doing something for other people, I got to put on that face. And then it does create this like momentum for yourself. You walk out of there and energy flows and you feel better.
I think the best way to get encouraged is to encourage. The best way to learn is to teach. Like I think you have to like reverse it sometimes, you know, like when you're tired, like the first thing like this I learned from Valentina, because the first fight I cornered her, we were in the hotel, it was right before the pandemic, and we had rooms for the red corner and blue corner down in the lobby of like in the hotel. So the day before the weigh-ins, we were working out in the room, and they have like a sauna bag, like a little sit down portable thing.
Yeah.
They have a scale and they have some mats. And it was just me and her. She was shadow boxing. We just finished our workout. I was sitting on the mats, and this heavyweight came in, and he goes, "How you guys doing? What's going on?" And I know Valentina, like when she's losing weight or she's focused during the week of a fight, she's not talking to anybody. Like she doesn't waste energy on even saying hi to people. Like she saves her energy. She doesn't even smile because it wastes the muscles in her face. Like
That's crazy.
she's super focused on the task at hand. And I remember like like if someone says hi to me, I'm gonna be like, "Hey, what's up, man? Like, how you doing?" So he steps on the scale, and I was like, "How you doing?" And I remember him going, "I have a few pounds to go. I'm a little tired, but I'm good." And then he walked out, and she was finishing up her round of shadow boxing. She had like 2 more minutes left, and she finished. She goes, "Richie, did you know that boy?" And I said, "No, why?" She goes, "I would never tell anybody I'm tired, especially if I don't know them." So I was like, whoa, that's why you're the champ. So like that, like saying you're tired or saying you feel a certain way, you're like giving it power over you. So like that right there, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And I remember my friend Devin Levake, he did the New York City, he did a bear crawl for New York City Marathon. It wasn't the actual New York City Marathon, but he did a marathon through New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was bear crawled. And I remember 2 weeks before he did it, he messaged me, "Hey, would you pray for me during the bear crawl?" And I was like, "Sure, what are you doing right now?" And he's like, "I'm at a track in Jersey City. I'm doing 3 miles bear crawl." I'm like, "I'll come meet you." My wife was doing something, so I went and met him. And he was doing on the outside of the turf. And he had like these gloves and his fingers taped. And I remember he had like 2 laps left. And he's like, "Oh, I'm good." And he started to take his wraps off. He's like, "I'm gonna have to retape my hands." He's like, I'm good for the day." And I was like, mentally, I was like, "Man, you can't like quit with 2 laps left. Like, let me tape it up. I said, I'll do the laps on the inside on the turf with you, like on the inside of the fence." So I did them with him. And then it was freaking brutal, bro. 2 laps.
How many did he do at that point?
Bro, I almost like threw up because you're not used to being hunched over.
And you did 2 of them, and he did 18
And I was like,
before.
oh, dude, it was pain. But I remember going home and being like, man, like you can't give that power. Like you can't quit like 2 rounds because it's more of a mental thing. So I gave him a voice note of that story of Valentina saying, "I'm not tired." So I remember 2 weeks leading up to it, every time I saw him, he's like, "I'm not tired, you're tired. I'm not tired.
Yeah.
I'm not tired." So he kept just like telling himself. And I mean, him completing that and being a part of it and witnessing it, I walked the whole thing with him. And I had like a playlist with him, like with some Christian
You
music.
walked the entire marathon with him?
Yeah, I walked like, yeah, I was like the only one. I think there was a few of us that were up, but some of us were sitting on the bus. But I walked the whole thing, and I was holding my phone, playing the music that I was playing on his phone, and it was like worship Christian music, and I kind of like took control because there were people on his bus. Like every mile and a half, he would get off, and he would go into this little van bus, and he would rest, and he would get like thorough gun. He would get like maybe 15 minutes, and then like we'd retape his hands, and he'd come back out. And the first time we got on the bus, there was guys drinking and partying. They had like techno music playing. I'm like, yo, this isn't it. I'm like, guys, off the bus. And I started putting like more like worship music and stuff to like clear his mind and get his mind right. And so, yeah, I just was like, I'm doing this for it. I just felt like, hey, I got to do this for the whole thing. So I stayed up with him for the whole thing and pushed through. And I mean, dude, what a legend. Like I saw like, there's so many times that he could have broke and he just kept pushing. Like it was crazy. Like his bus would be on the other side of the street and you would think he would get up and walk across the street. Like he would bear crawl across the street. Then he would touch the step. Then he would start walking. Then he would come out and he would go right to touching the ground. So he didn't take one step
Without,
the whole
because he
thing.
wanted to track
The
every
whole
26
time
minutes.
was
Holy shit.
and we started at 5 p.m. at night and we finished 2 o'clock in the afternoon the next day in Central Park.
Wait, so 5 o'clock at night?
It was like 20 hours.
Oh my God. And
I think the longest break he took was like 30 minutes.
that's what's blowing my mind more because you're saying he's breaking every mile. So it's about 26 breaks.
But the bus was supposed to be every mile and a half. And the
Right.
guy would park like another 6 blocks up. And that's like almost another half mile.
Is he counting that towards his?
He was just like, where's this bus? Like, where's this bus? But he would have music on. He would just zone out. We'd be like, oh, it's a few more blocks up. I'm like, what the fuck's the bus? Where the fuck's the bus? You know,
Yeah.
like, and be up there. But
You were like, he's right there.
yeah.
Dude,
And you would hear him like humming to the music. Like he was the freaking savage, man.
you talk about people, like you said, born fighters are just built different. That dude's got it. You can't teach that.
He's crazy. Like after seeing that, I was just like, man, he's built different. Right now, he's hiking at Mount Everest.
Like what drives somebody to just do that?
I remember his father committed suicide when he was young, when he was like 13 years old. And so he decided to do it for suicide prevention for war vets. And he ended up raising $1 million. So he brought a lot of awareness and money towards that cause. And so I think that just motivated him to want to do more for a cause. And now he's just like, I think it's just like, you know, you push the limits and you do one thing, and then you want to keep pushing the limits to do something else. So it's like, I think it's also like you need to set goals for yourself. And if you don't have them, you don't have anything to look forward to. So it's like, hey, I'm like, Johnny, you want to do ADCC tournament? You're like, when is it? I'm like, 3 months. You're like, oh shit, okay. And like you sign up for it. Now you're like, oh man, now I have to train every single day. So I think like when people give themselves a goal or they say they're gonna do something, it's hard to turn back. And I think he'll say something and he's got a lot of people following and a lot of influence. So it's now you have all these people holding you accountable. So like you have to show up. You have to train hard. So
Yeah,
you know,
I wonder.
like, that's why I think it's cool to speak about your faith. You know, like
Yeah.
some people don't want to speak about it, but like if you speak about it, but then you're doing something different, then you're a hypocrite. So I
Right.
think it's like the more people you tell that you want to do something, the more people that are going to hold you accountable. So I think it's awesome to set those type of goals, whatever it is, whether it's like, hey, I want to run a marathon and you sign up for it. Like you tell everybody you're going to do it. Now you have to show up every day and train and put yourself on a schedule.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, a really good point. People always say like speaking things into existence, which could be true, but it's also you're speaking it back to yourself. So then when you go home, because you talk to me and you're full-fledged confident, I'm going to go do this. And you know I walk back home like, I have to do this. I have to go train the way I've never trained before. And you push with a different motor than if you never said that to me.
Yep.
So I mean, again, that level that Devin pushes himself is not what a normal human can bring himself to do. You know what I mean? And even guys, like I wanted to ask about Shevchenko. You mentioned that some fighters are born with it and some fighters progressively kind of get it. Do you think she was
born with it.
Born with it.
She's been training since she was a little girl. I think she has like 17 world kickboxing titles between Muay Thai and K1 and different styles. But she's she's just different, man. Like she lives it too. Like she's never drinks, she's never parties. She likes to travel the world. She likes to meet people. She likes to see different cultures. She speaks 4 different languages, and she's just like a true martial artist in and out, you know, like
What do you think is that huge differentiator besides her being focused? Because I'm assuming that's what every fighter has.
I think just like evolving to always wanting new goals. You know, you say you want to be a champ, then you're the champ. Then it's like, I want to stay the champ. I want to be the greatest female fighter of all time. You know, it's like that becomes your identity. So I think like for her, it's like she's got to go down as, you know, one of the greatest female fighters of all time. And so like that's who you are. You keep speaking that, people keep saying that about you. It's who you are. So you have no other choice but to show up every day and stay disciplined in the fight and to like have that mindset, you know?
It is interesting, man, because I see a lot of fighters at even CULTR that are great, and it's like just putting it out there that you want. Like I mean, Munch is the one that comes to my mind because I probably know him better than the other guys over there. What is he, 8-0? I mean, the dude is
About to
just
be
like
8-0. Yeah,
that would be
7-0.
8-0, 7-0. He has some of the best jiu-jitsu I've ever seen, and it's just now that's constant. Like nobody can touch him. What do you think? What do you think is a key for somebody like him now to break into, let's say, the next level of fighting?
I think we get this next fight under our belt, we win. He's 8-0, and I think it's just getting the call and the opportunity and the chance, and then it's just capitalizing it. But throughout the whole thing, it's mental battles for any fighter. You know, everybody goes through different struggles mentally. So I think it's just like staying disciplined and showing up. You know, having a good team around you, having good people that believe in you, and then I mean, you got to believe in yourself and you got to want it. You know, like you have to want to be the best in the world to do this sport.
Right.
Like if your goal isn't to be a UFC champion and you just want to fight, good on you, but you're not gonna do great because you have people that are hungry, like trying to feed themselves. Like they're living on the couch. They're putting everything they have, not only for themselves, some people for their country, for their family, whatever it is, to make it. So I mean, it's tough. And I think that's for me when I was like, hey, I don't want to be UFC champ. It's like, why am I going to do this?
Why am I doing this?
Like, I'm not getting paid that much. Like, I'm going to be getting injured all the time. Like, where's my focus at?
It's so funny you mentioned focus because I think everybody that trains, hobbyist or not, falls prey to that sometimes. Like even me and I'm still into it, but if I was training for a competition and now every day, not only am I in the gym training, but my mental focus is on jiu-jitsu and watching tape. And now I'm like, all right, there's an opportunity cost here somewhere. What am I sacrificing? And then I had to take a step back and be like, all right, I'm not focusing enough on the business side of things and what I really do for a living, what I love to do. And so this is great. And I have appreciation for fighters, but I have to come to grips with that. I'm not trying to be the best, and that's okay. And I think
I think it's okay either way. Like,
right,
if
exactly.
you're a hobbyist, cool. If you want to get better, awesome. If you want to be a good training partner for these guys and be in the room, be surrounded with it, that's awesome. I think you just have to be clear on it with yourself. Because if you're fighting and you're taking fights, but you're not preparing properly or you're not in it mentally, because I think 90% of the battle's here, right? Like look at Conor McGregor. He's super talented as a fighter, but I think mentally he was just steps ahead of everybody else. Like he would speak into fruition. He visualized it. Like one thing my wrestling coach, growing up was always like, you have to visualize your hand getting raised. You have to visualize it. So every night I'd visualize my hand getting raised, my hand getting raised, me winning, me winning, me winning. So it's just like, he was such a good visualizer and speaking it. And like, he didn't give a fuck, you know, like
it does. And again, speaking things out loud does help you then speak to yourself better, because I know even like me, I fall prey to it just saying to me like, oh, I see that guy as a black belt in jiu-jitsu and, you know, I'll never be there. You know, I'm good, but I'm never going to be that good. Or when somebody asks me a question, you deal with like this imposter syndrome of like, maybe I know, maybe I don't. But if you speak that stuff out loud, be like, no, I am really good and I can get a lot better. I think you talk to yourself a little bit differently.
I think we have, I don't know the stat, I know it somewhere, but it's like the amount of thoughts that we have daily, and majority of those are all negative thoughts. So I say to my fighters or anyone in general, like you have to, just like you counter stuff in jiu-jitsu, you counter stuff boxing, you counter stuff fighting, you need to counter and capture your thoughts. You need to be like, is this thought even true? Like you being like, hey, I don't belong in this room with these guys. But then you're like, you pull that thought and you look at it and you're like, I do.
Yeah.
Like I could hang with these guys. Like
Yep.
I do train. I train daily. Like I'm strong. I wrestled. I know what I'm doing. You know, like
Yeah.
so I think it's I think everyone struggles with that. And I think it's, you know, like taking a step back. Like I believe in breath work and like really slowing it down and doing breath to like kind of ground yourself. And I think that's where the spiritual thing comes in because
Right.
it puts things into perspective. Like at the end of the day, like we're here for a moment and then we could be gone, right? Like, and I think some of these thoughts aren't even true that we're giving credit to, you know, like we were saying, you tired? I'm tired. Man, I'm tired. Like if I say I'm tired, I'm gonna instantly slouch
Oh
down
yeah.
and I'm gonna start getting tired. You know, like
You say things like that, like I'm tired, in the hopes that the other person says, "Yeah, me too. Let's take a nap." You know, like it allows you to suffer and be negative with somebody. What do they say? Like misery loves company,
Yep.
and that's something that's so real. And I used to watch my dad growing up. My dad's the opposite, right? He walks in a room, he could have had a 10-hour workday, had been miserable, walks in that house, he's happy-go-lucky, having a great day. And for me, I'd be like, this motherfucker's on at all times. Like it's pissing me off, man. You ever have an off day? 6 Nori's up doing the same thing. But that drives me now because I know how that made me feel to keep pushing. I gotta do that to other people. But like you just said, telling yourself you can be in the room with those dudes, I think is the most important part, is like that countering that negative talk, just like jiu-jitsu or martial arts. That's a really good way of putting things.
I think when I started wrestling, I didn't start wrestling till my freshman year. So the 8 losses I had, I could have won those matches because I was talented enough, but I gave too much credit to the negative thoughts. Like this guy's been wrestling his whole life. I just started wrestling. So I think when I put myself into a room training outside, like off season with the guys that were state champs and stuff, I was getting hammered. Like I was getting beat up in the beginning. But then you go through like a wave where it's like, okay, I'm getting beat up. I'm getting beat up. Whoa, I can hang with this person. Whoa, I can hang with this person. Whoa, I can score on them. Whoa,
Yeah.
I can beat them. And like, so it kind of like turns, but it's a lot of the time, yeah, it's technical and you're getting stronger and you're getting better. But I think it's also a huge mental switch in your mind that you're like, they're human. They're not that much better than me. Like, you know, you build these people up in your mind in fighting too. Like, man, this guy's so good. This, you know, and then you train with them or you move with them or you get in the cage with them and you're like, man, I could beat this guy.
It's not so bad.
You
That
know?
what you just said, I think, is like the demise of a lot of high school. We use wrestling because we both wrestled. Wrestlers is like, man, that dude started when he was 5 years old. He trains harder than me. He's tougher than me. He deserves to win this match almost. And I think that's the biggest acknowledgement you should make as a martial artist is you walk on that mat, it's a 0 game, right? Like he doesn't deserve to win and I don't deserve to win. We both have to earn it at this point. I don't care if he's a black belt and I'm a white belt. I have the potential to tap that man out. And the opposite is true. You have to walk in as a black belt and be like, I don't care who you are. I have to prove my worth here. I didn't deserve that win because I have a darker belt than you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that helped me switch because like you said, I can walk on a jiu-jitsu mat right now and I can hang with you. You know what I mean? I don't care that you've been training longer or that you think you're tougher than I am. I'm here to compete, you know?
Yep.
So you can't psych yourself out before the match even starts.
Yeah.
And that happens with life too.
100%. 100%. I think, yeah, I mean,
Do you feel like that applies now and it's easier for you to transition into business? Because I feel like watching you as a fighter, it's like I've been through the worst. The worst thing that happened in life is probably just getting your ass kicked by another man.
Yeah.
What's the worst that happens with this gym? You know what I mean? Like how am I going to be afraid of another man if I can go on a mat?
I think a
and fight
lot
somebody?
has to do with that and like what we've been through. But I think it all stems back to my faith, right? Like, so I realize I'm not in control. And so doors open when they're supposed to and where they're supposed to. Not saying that I'm like sitting back and I'm waiting for doors to open. I'm opening them. But if for some reason they close, I know it's for the better for me. It wasn't meant to happen. Whether it's a brand I'm working with or it's, you know, the gym or whatever it is, fighters that come in, maybe I'm supposed to work with them. Maybe they're supposed to train with me. Maybe they're not. Maybe, you know, we lost the fight and you're questioning why it happened. I mean, I feel like everything happens for a reason. And when you can live with that sense of not having control over things, you live at peace. And it makes things a lot easier, you know, because money can come and go, right? Like we can make money doing anything. So like when you hunt things for money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons and wrong intentions. I always say like, when I live in fear, right? I live for money. and I live for deals, for transactions. I look at people differently. But when I live in faith, I feel like I'm living in purpose, and I'm living for connection and for people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No. Do you have a favorite prayer that you sort of recite to yourself?
I have something that was pretty cool. Like I pray for my fighters. Some of them, not all of them, because maybe they don't believe
Talk us through
what I
that.
believe. So prayer is like a weird thing, right? It's not a weird thing, but for fighting it is, because it's like, they say, it's his will be done, not ours, right? So it's like our will, we want them to win the fight. Like we know the sacrifice they put in. We know these people individually. We know their heart. We care about them. We've trained them. And it's also like our reputation, our gym, like, like our training on the line. So one fight recently, I was praying for a kid, and right before I was like, God, just speak through me. Just like say something to this guy for me. And right when I started praying for him, it came to me to have a heart of a lion and the eyes of an eagle. And I was like, whoa, that was kind of crazy. Like that didn't come from me. Right. And I remember stepping back and saying it to Munch. I was like, yo, like I was just praying for him, and God spoke to me and told me this. And it was crazy because he got a like 3 days, he won the fight. And then a few days later, on his YouTube, it popped up why God identifies himself with two animals. And it was the lion and the eagle. And it talks about the lion, his confidence and his attitude, right? He's not the biggest animal in the jungle, but he's the king of it because of his confidence and his attitude. And the way he stalks and prowls, like that's how you want to be in a fight. You don't want to just rush. You want to wait, and you want to stalk, and you want to hunt it down, right? And then the eagle can see 50 times a human. They can see clearly 5 miles away. And by time like their prey knows that they're coming, it's too late. So they just like shoot down. So he sent me that, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So I actually had a lion tattoo, and then I have an eagle tattoo here, and then I just recently got that written on my arm. So it's like,
So you said this to your fighter prior to even seeing this video?
yeah, he sent it to me.
That's
And
crazy.
so then I have like the lion, it says heart of a lion, and then the eagle here, and it says
Eyes of an eagle. Oh, that's sick.
So yeah, I think like that's been like kind of our mantra and like our saying, because it's it obviously it felt like it came from God,
Right.
and it feels like that's what it's like to be in a fight. Like you want to be calm, like a lion. You want to have the confidence and the attitude, but then you want to see everything that's going on, and when the opportunity's there, you need to go.
Right.
Like you can't hesitate. So
I remember, because we've talked about this prior. I remember you mentioning it is a weird feeling to pray for a fight, because in order to succeed, you had to almost bring somebody else to near death, and that's a hard like reality to face. Is that you had to hurt somebody to win, and we're taught in life that it's not a zero-sum game. You don't have to do that. How do you kind of balance that? Having to hurt somebody else to win.
I don't think you look at it like trying to hurt somebody, because like your goal in a fight's not to injure them, right? Or really hurt them. It's a sport, and you train yourself for it. So like mentally you're in a different state, right? Like people in the military, they're like programmed to go and like defend their country and kill people. Like, right? Like you do it numbingly, right? Like because you're trained that way. I wouldn't consider like killing somebody and fighting the same thing, but I'm just using the analogy of like training your mind. So like when you're training for a fight, you're like, man, this is like, this guy's trying to beat me. I'm trying to beat him. There's the cage doors closed, and like, it is what it is. So I think like we program ourselves, it's a sport. So we don't want anyone to get injured. And there's always sportsmanship before and after. But yeah, I mean, it's a sport.
I think that is the most amazing sight, train or not trained, when somebody watches two men or women go battle, almost bring themselves to death, and they shake hands and hug after it. Like if you don't train, you see that, you're like, what is wrong with these human beings that just fought and now they're hugging and now they're best friends?
Because you have so much respect for that person. Right. Like you've thought about them, you studied their tape, you see them, and you're like, they're doing the same towards you. So now it's like all this time leads up to it. You left everything out in the cage, and you just fought each other. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So at the end, like you have so much respect for that person. And at the end of the day, they brought out so much in you, right? Like a lot of times they're like, man, I love you. They like always say like, I love you afterwards. And you're like, what? You love me? Like you tried to kill me. Like, but they love the process and what that person brought out in them. Like they made them better. They made them become a better fighter. They made them learn different techniques or evolve mentally, you know?
Right. And even the biggest trash talkers in the game that perceivably hated each other prior, other than the only person I can think of is Khabib and Conor. After the fight, they seem like they're best friends now. Even if they have a little more respect towards one another as humans, like John Jones and Cormier, you know, after their fight, prior to that was on site, they'd fight in the streets. But now, like after that, they walk around with a different respect.
Because they've both pushed each other to new levels and new heights, you know? So I think like in every fight that someone takes, they're leveling up. They're learning so much about themselves. Like you do a grappling match, you learn so much about yourself. Like I learned so much about myself wrestling because I would quit on myself my freshman year because of thoughts in my mind. And then it would torment you at night. You'd be like, how could I do that? Like, how could I quit on myself? So then you like learn to get better and like, I'm not going to let that happen again. So then you're just like getting better, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like weightlifting is very progressive overload, right? You can get stronger, you can get bigger. People don't normally see that with toughness. Like I know, and the same feeling you do, get on a mat, get your ass kicked. Sometimes say to yourself, you know what, maybe I'm just not tough. You know, maybe I don't have that mental toughness to keep going when things get hard. But that you do get hardened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get on a mat enough times, you reach a point of like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done losing before I actually lost. I'm going to push myself. And the next thing you know, you're tougher than the guys you thought were tougher than you at one point.
Yeah, you're just like unlocking different layers.
Yeah, and that's
levels,
I think the best feeling in jiu-jitsu is like when
Yeah.
you finally realize that, oh shit, I do have the ability to get better.
Yeah, and I think when you like push someone to where they're exhausted or you get them to tap, you're like, man, I made this person like submit to me.
Yeah.
Or like I broke this person.
It's a crazy
So I think
feeling.
it like, yeah, I don't think there's another feeling like it. So I think that's what drives people. Like Conor, he has all the money in the world. He was a double champ. He's done everything he could for the sport. Like he changed the sport, right? Now he's doing acting. He's got kids. He's got family. He's got all the money in the world. But he still wants to come back and fight because there's nothing else that's ever going to give him that feeling.
Right. Like you said, I mean, not to say making a lot of money is easy, but the feeling of making money and that reward is not even comparable to, let's say, winning a fight or a really hard wrestling match or jiu-jitsu match.
It's different.
It's the craziest feeling in the world.
Yeah, like I mean, the person I was talking about earlier that I said I was training and I was wrestling was Justin Bieber. I was training him at the old gym. Like this was pre-pandemic, and we were boxing, and I could tell like, you know, he had a lot of weight on him just with like everything that's going on in his life, and you know, I mean, a lot of stress. You know, the bigger you are, the bigger the name, the more stress you have. So I took his gloves off and I brought him on the mat and I just pushed him. And he's like, "What are we doing?" And I'm like, "Wrestle. What does that look like to you? Whatever it looks like to me." And he played hockey. He's a tough, athletic kid. And he hip tossed me. So I was like, "Oh hell no!" So then I like, you know, I fucked him up. But then, he was laying there and he was out of breath. He's like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "If you put me on stage in front of 10 people, like I'm gonna pass out. You know, like I'm not
How do you do
used
that?
to what
Yeah.
you're doing. You know, like it's just learning how to breathe through it." And he fell in love with it. So we trained like 10 times there, and then he flew me out to LA, and I trained him for like a week and a half out there, and it was all focused on like grappling.
That's amazing.
And I think he felt the freedom of grappling and the stress relief it was and what it did for him mentally. And you see now like all these celebrities, right? Like training, competing, doing jiu-jitsu, because you go from Conor McGregor or Justin Bieber or one of these guys on stage, right? In front of millions of people, thousands of people. And then you go home, you're sitting at home and you're just like, what do I do now? You know, so you get like so much praise and then you're like left alone by yourself. So then a lot of these people resort to like drugs or smoking weed or just doing something to kind of give them another up. Mm-hmm. But there's no other up that can kind of help translate or like reciprocate that feeling other than like grappling.
For sure. I didn't realize. So does Justin Bieber have hands?
He can box. He's an athlete, man. Yeah. He's good at basketball. Like we play basketball with each other out there. Like He's a trash talker. He's a funny kid.
If you can connect me with Justin, I'd love to grapple with Justin. I'd love to tap him out. That's funny. They hip toss you though.
Yeah. So
He caught you slipping. You're like, yeah, fuck him. Just talking about training, and we go back to like the Marcelo days. Who are some of the best guys that you train with over there?
prior to going to Marcellus, one of the best guys I've ever trained with JT Torres, and still to this day, like I'd say he's one of the best. At Marcellus, I mean, everybody was there, you know? Like at the time, it was the place, it still is like one of the top gyms. You know, Munch was there, Dylan, Gianni Grippa, Mateus Denise, Mateus Lutes, John Satava, Bernardo Ferrer was like two-time, he was double gold champ. So his weight in absolute, like 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
He's the one that started BJJ Fanatics.
Which is, that's by the way, crazy that people just see him as like this like fun guy that's kind of, you know, whatever on BJJ Fanatics, not
He started
knowing
doing
that
like
he's a
Facebook
killer.
ads and stuff back then, and people are like, "What's he doing? What's he doing?"
Yeah.
And like he was just ahead of his time, and
Really?
he started doing the videos, and then like he just blew up with it. He was just really smart.
It's just funny because again, you see him now, he kind of looks like a hobbyist. Like, oh, I love jiu-jitsu and I'm gonna help these guys teach an
Nicest
instructor.
guy I ever met, man.
He looks like it.
Yeah, every time you see him, oos.
Oh, really?
Oos brother.
That's
Hey,
awesome, man. So how old was Dylan just starting at this time?
No, Dylan was a brown belt. Then I think he got his black belt while I was there. And then him and Munch, you know, they got kicked out of the gym while I was there.
Oh, really?
I was a brown belt at the time. I didn't get my black belt yet, but I was still close with them. So like Munch asked me if I would train him for MMA. So he was coming to the gym.
Yeah.
And I was still training at Marcellus. And it definitely probably prolonged me getting my black belt because I was still friends with him. And some of the guys weren't because he stopped
Really?
going. But I didn't want to change who I was as a person or dictate my relationship with somebody because of the way other people had a relationship with them. I feel like
Yeah.
you should never choose sides. Like if you care about somebody or you don't have a problem with them, it doesn't mean that you should get in the middle of that. You know? So I think it kind of affected me. So for me, I was like, if it's going to take me a little bit longer, it's going to take me a little bit longer, but it's not going to change who I am.
Was Dylan a brown belt when he got kicked out?
No, he was a black belt.
He was a black belt. at the
Yeah,
time.
he was
Okay.
still competing and he was one of the best in the world.
At that time still.
Yeah.
How dominant was he in the room?
He was really good. I mean, the whole room was so good, but he was right up there on the top. You know?
Yeah. That's again when we
But every round, everyone in there was savages. And then you'd get, like, every day there'd be new people visiting. So people would come from all over the world. Black belts are the one on train there. And I just feel like that level of just being around that, like, it just elevates you so fast. Because it's like sink or swim, and you just have to get better. Timing, speed, technique, cardio. So, like, when people would come in from other gyms and they weren't like used to that, you could just tell, you know?
It's funny how you really can hack growth by being with the right people. Like I take a year and train at some Joe Schmo gym. You take a year and train at Marcelo's. You're getting so much better than I'll get anywhere else, you know? And I think that's the importance.
And I think the importance is time, right? Like there's the 10,000 rule. You do anything for 10,000 hours, you become, I don't know if they say like an expert, but you become like good at it, right? So I think like, people say it took me 10 years to get my black belt. Some people it took 5 years, but that 5 years, they spent probably double the amount of time on the mat as you.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like, you know, you could accelerate in anything if you're putting the right amount of time into it. So like if you wanted to run a marathon and be a great runner, like if you're running every single day, you're going to get better at it. But if you're running every other day, that person's running double what you're running.
Yeah. Yeah. Was your training, do you believe, more intense at Marcelo's? Like your rounds were, did you guys go longer than other people?
Yeah, everything was intense. I mean, I would drill for an hour, then I would train for an hour, then I would go home, rest, and then I would come back at night and train again.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, the hours I was putting in within those 6 hours were probably 4 hours a day.
Jesus. Of just training.
5 days a week, and then on the weekend, probably another 3. So, yeah.
It is interesting. Anybody that I've talked to right now that has a black belt in jiu-jitsu, whether they're in that process right now or they went through a time where they were extreme training. I talked to Dylan, and he was training literally 3-4 times a day. I would talk to my buddy JP, And he said there was a point where he was training 14 times a week. And normal people that aspire to have their black belt aren't training like that. Not to say you can keep up with that, but you have to have a point in time where you push yourself to like the absolute.
I mean,
limit.
there's goals too, right? Like, do you want to be like one of the best black belts, or you want to teach, you want to be in the sport, or like if you're a hobbyist and you have a different job and you're not ever going to be really in the martial arts. Like, we have guys that just show up every day, they're attorneys or they're whatever, and they deserve their black belt because of the time they put into it and the dedication. Like, are they going to be tapping out high level black belts? Probably not, but like, they deserve it, you know? So it's like, there's categories in it, you know?
I guess
like,
that is the
I think
problem.
there's levels to it, you know? But, I mean, it's, you just have to be honest, like, with yourself. Like, if you're doing it to do it, like, and you're a martial arts and a martial artist and you show up and you're disciplined, like, you deserve your black belt.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's why I guess the belt system is so subjective nowadays.
The way they are with like most gyms is, and this is like old school Gracie Baja way, it's like 72 hours is like a stripe or something like that. So it's like 3 days, I think it becomes 3 days a week for 6 months and you get like a stripe on your belt.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're showing up 3 days, if you're showing up like once a week for 6 months, you're not going to get a stripe. So it's like, oh man, like, but if you're showing up 3-4 days a week, that's pretty consistent for someone that has a job and, you know,
3 times a week.
It's a good amount.
Is a good amount.
So I would say like 3 or 4, like I would say 4 is probably the best.
Yeah.
But 3 or 4 is good. You know, if you're not looking to be like, I want to open up my own jiu-jitsu school and I want to be a coach and I want to be like a competitor and do that, you know?
Yeah. I guess I get it. The system is so tough because there is intent to training too. Like my hour can look very different than your hour on a mat. Maybe I'm dogging it. Maybe I go with all the beginners for my live rolls, or maybe I'm taking notes and watching video and going back home and watching highlights of other people. So like there are levels to this. And I think you said it before, you catch the bug of training. Like you just become obsessed. You don't think of anything else but training.
Yeah, and I think the mats don't lie, you know, like
they don't lie.
If you're not improving, you're not improving for a reason.
100%.
You know, whether you're not paying attention, whether you're showing up late, whether you're like not using the techniques that the coach is showing, or you're not putting into practice, you're just going right back to what you're good at, like you know to do. Like I was a wrestler. I want to get good at jiu-jitsu. So I put the gi on, right? Because it would slow me down and I would learn technique. Like I started off doing privates with Gianni because at the time he was like in my weight class, he was one of the best black belts in the world. So I did like maybe privates for like a month and then he was like, dude, just drill with me. You know, like you're good. Like I need a drilling partner. Like instead of paying me for privates, just drill with me. So then I would learn from him.
Really?
So like I put myself into that and he was like a type A personality where he had to do the same thing every day. And I think that helped me get my black belt because I dedicated myself to helping him and being a good training partner. And it forced me to learn and to grow. Because like maybe one day I would sweep him with a single leg X. Next day I'm not going to do it because he would go home and it would eat him up. So then I would have to evolve. I'd have to be a good training partner and to get better. Like I had to learn to come up with different stuff to be successful, to like sweep home or whatever it was, you know.
Do you recommend gi training for no gi grapplers?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to like, and I think it's part of the martial art. Like I think it's like part of the discipline, like wearing the belt, wearing the gi. Like I look at it as like,
it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know.
So
some
hot.
people today, it's not as big. I think definitely with like the leg locks and Danaher and like all that. But before that, I mean, the gi was like the biggest thing, you know?
Yeah.
And the IBJJF tournaments were like, if you were IBJJF black belt gi champ, like you were the best.
Right, and now it's more so the ADCC champs.
ADCs, yeah. Like
it's just an evolution.
ADCCs were way up there, but it was like
really
right there.
Now it's like this, no?
Yeah, now it's
like not even close.
Now it's probably looked at more.
It's weird because you hear like somebody's an IBJJF champion, like, all right, dude, how'd you do in ADCC though? You know, it's like completely different. Like those just won't even make it out of trials sometimes.
Yeah, I guess it's like what their goals are too, you know?
Same stuff, right?
Yeah. I think it's all those tournaments. Everyone's like right there, man. It's so crazy. The levels are.
I guess I gotta put a fucking gi back on soon. Huh? that's what I'm hearing.
Have you worn a gi?
Dude, I haven't worn a gi since maybe 16 years old.
Really?
Yeah, cause I just hated it. It was so uncomfortable.
So you never got promoted?
I got blue belt at 17. Okay. 17 years old, I got blue belt, and then never wore a gi after that.
Damn. But you still get promoted.
Yeah, you know. Yeah. I think you're right. It slows down the game a little bit. it forces you to remove the ego because again, as a wrestler or like a little bit of a more pressure passer, I'm like, okay, let me.
You have to learn to break grips. You have to learn technique, slow it down. It slows it down a lot.
Yeah.
Because I would go like this with another wrestler. We just headbutt. And that would be like nothing would happen. I'm like, and then once I started really leveling up my jiu-jitsu, then it was like you see everything, your steps ahead, your moves ahead, and it just like slows it down.
Is that your advice for a new, like what would your advice be for somebody starting jiu-jitsu today?
Just train.
Just train.
Whatever class is available at the time that you can make it, go. Whether it's gi or no gi, and just show up every day.
How about advice for a wrestler that's been training for a little bit, got his blue belt, but feels stuck?
The gi.
Put the gi on.
Yeah, and play positions you're not good at. So if you're like a top guy, you're used to being on top and passing, just focus on just playing guard. You know, and slowing it down. You know, try not to use muscle. I think like that's the biggest thing. Like a big guy like wants to be. It's like go with women, go with guys that are smaller than you, go with people that you can like work on techniques, and try new things.
Yeah, interesting. I gotta take your advice. So what's next for CULTR? Where are we at? Well, why don't you give a brief overview of what CULTR is compared to other basic boxing gyms?
Cool. So yeah, I mean, I was a franchise. We were LA Boxing, and then we got bought out by UFC Gym. And then yeah, I think when I went out to LA, I was training Justin. I was at different gyms out there. I was looking around. I was like, these gyms are cool, but they don't have the same culture as mine. And I just felt like I needed, there was a space that was missing, right? There's still like either hardcore or like a hardcore MMA gym, or there's like really like cardio kickboxing for females type
CKO
boxing,
type of
like
thing.
Rumble style, like more cardio based, not technique based. And I wanted to like bridge that gap. And we were doing these classes for a long time, but I just felt like aesthetically and brand wise, we could do it a lot better. So CULTR was, yeah, it's like our whole slogan is train with purpose, live with purpose. So it's come in and try something new, try something different. So we get a lot of people to come in and try the cardio classes, boxing, kickboxing, and the sweat and strength classes, like our HIIT classes. And then they see other females doing the Muay Thai, they see other females doing jiu-jitsu, and you'll be like, try it, just try it. Like if you plant a seed to anybody, like, hey, try to sign up for 10K. People are like, they'll do it, they'll start running, but it's like, you just plant that seed, try jiu-jitsu. They're like, I would never do that. Most people would never go to a jiu-jitsu gym because they're intimidated. But if they come to a gym, they could do something else and they feel comfortable and safe, then they feel like, oh, I know people there. Oh, I can do it. So we see a lot of females now, a lot of people that would never try it, stepping into it. So it's been really cool. Next, I'm opening up another gym, CULTR Gym, across the street from this one. So this is like more fight based. And then the gym's going to be a high-end boutique strength gym.
Oh, really?
Sauna, steam room, cold plunge, juice bar. Yeah, so.
You know what's fun? I mean, you obviously have huge dreams and aspirations for everything you do. And then you say things and sometimes they're like, yeah, right, dude. Okay. But CULTR is like a perfect example of like you actually went and did it. Was there a point in time where you didn't think CULTR, so for backstory here, CULTR, you were across the street at a much smaller gym. It was UFC Gym at the time. You were talking about the transition out into a bigger gym, naming it CULTR. It was kind of like the rumor around. You committed to it, but now we had issues with timing where this wasn't ready yet. It was almost like an open warehouse. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like it wasn't going to happen?
No. I always feel like when God puts something on your heart and you know it's gonna happen. Or for me, like whenever I'm like, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. You know, like there's no turning back. So it's like you commit to something, and I think that's the beauty in it, right? Like you commit to something and you know it's not going to be smooth. You know it's not going to be like A to B. There's going to be all these, but that's what builds your character and that's what builds your story, and that's what makes it that much better at the end. So like I knew right before I opened CULTR that I was going to go through hell, just like I did when I opened the first gym. I lost all my money in a Ponzi scheme, but the triumph is in those struggles and pushing through, just like anything else, just like jiu-jitsu, like to get your black belt, but it not be earned through like the battles and the wars and like finding out about yourself and digging deep. Like it's not you don't appreciate as much.
Right.
So like I loved the gym, and I felt like God was telling me like, hey, you want to build this gym called Culture? Get back in there full time. Start teaching again. Start coaching again full time, and like be the culture, like be a part of it, and like show what it's about. So it was like, all right, let's go. Let's go. Let's get my hands dirty again, like
Yeah, that's one thing. Again, I don't go to other gyms other than like jujitsu gyms. The one thing I noticed about you as the owner is that if somebody's out, they're sick or whatever, you're coaching, and not only are you coaching, you're a great coach. You step on a jujitsu mat. Not only are you a black belt, but you can teach a class, which is harder than sometimes actually training. You're not just getting up and going. You're actually teaching the fundamentals of the tree of whatever you have to learn that day. And I noticed that off the jump, I learned more from your 3 wrestling classes I've gone to than I learned in months sometimes in high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of the process that you learned and now you're applying it to your other fighters shows a lot that you're willing, like you said, get a little bit dirty, get on the mats. Not only prove to you that I'm a coach, but if you guys want to bang too, I'm here. Like you're fighting, you're sparring, you're 43 years old and you're sparring these dudes that are 25 years old trying to fight.
It's funny too. Like sometimes I'll spar with them, and then I'm like, oh, this will work. Oh, that will work. Oh, let me try this. And like you almost have to feel them out to understand them a little bit.
Yeah.
So I feel like I said, the best way to learn is to teach. So as I continue to teach, I continue to grow as a coach. And like, I want to be the best coach for my fighters. I want to be the best husband for my wife. I want to be the best boss for my employees. And I just want to continue to grow. So I think that's like the biggest thing that martial arts taught me, that we don't know everything, and you have to have an open mind, open heart, and you have to continue to want to improve.
Yeah.
And I think like as a martial artist, we're never going to know everything about jiu-jitsu. We're never going to know everything about striking. And you can literally like have to put your ego to the side and say, hey, I can actually learn from this person who's a white belt. Like they might do a move that might work for them. Some stuff I might teach might not work for you.
Right.
Right? Some stuff might, and it might be in your game, and it might be the way you train for the rest of your life. But I think it's just like removing that ego and kind of continue to want to learn.
The individuality of the sport, I think, is the most traditional to life, right? Because nowadays, especially, we're over consuming all content, motivational content, how-to content. Fighting, like you said, maybe you teach me a move, maybe it resonates, maybe it doesn't, but I have to learn my game, which moves work for me better based on whatever. Life is the same way, right? We watch these people online and this is their morning routine and they have to do this every single day. And then you go and try it. And as a younger guy, like I remember being 22, I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. It doesn't align with my life, but I'm going to have to do it because that's what I have to do to be successful. And the answer is you don't really have to. You have to find what works for you. And I think if I didn't train martial arts, I wouldn't realize that as quick as I did, because again, you try a move like an ankle pick and you're not that type of wrestler. It's just not going to work for you. Stop trying to, try moves that just aren't for you.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of gyms and coaches and places that want you to fight a certain way or do a certain thing or do a technique, and they're hard on you if you don't do it that way. And I feel like that's not the way, and that's not the way that I like to teach. I like to teach concepts and theories, and I like to show techniques. And the way you apply them is on you. Like you can be your own artist, like the mat's like your canvas, and like you can get creative and do some stuff, and like it might work for you and I might not work for me. So I might not have had that in my game, So like I've always loved having other coaches teaching out of the gym. Like I don't look at culture as like, hey, it's my gym. It's me.
not Rich's gym.
Yeah, I love having other coaches that are better at different areas than I am. Yeah. And like together we can show different techniques, and some things work for you, some things don't. Some things from this coach work better for you. So I think that's, how it should be.
Yeah. Well, big things coming for culture. I wrap up every podcast by asking the guest 2 questions. In your life, it can be fight related, it doesn't have to be. What has been the most challenging, humbling moment? And let's follow that up with what has been your highest achievement, greatest moment of your life.
I think challenging moment is, like opening these businesses when there's all these roadblocks, right? Like this last one was crazy. Like I had a gym for 15 years and my lease was up and the other place wasn't ready yet. So we were doing classes on a turf field in a residential building. So like we lost all our members and I had to like start from scratch. So I think like the most challenging is always like when I'm about to take off and do something new. It's like testing my character, testing me, testing him up if I'm ready. And I always look at it as a test, but it's always a challenge, but it's always, I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's pushing through, just like to get your black belt. Like it's going to be tough. There's so many times you want to quit. So many times you don't believe in yourself. So many times you doubt it. And I think that's with anything, say your podcast, right? It's like, if you just show up and you do it every single day, all of a sudden like, whoa, how did I get here?
Yeah.
People don't see the behind the scenes. So I think it's probably been that, right? Like the challenges of getting the gym off the ground, then challenges of doing it again. And now like I'm about to open up another one. I know there's gonna be a ton of challenges, but as challenging as it is, it's like, it's always rewarding. And then, what was the second one?
Your greatest achievement, your highest to highs.
Probably my daughter, man.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah.
Your wife will like that one.
Yeah, we tried for 4 years. We did IVF. We had 2 eggs that were good out of 8 of them. And the first one, we had a miscarriage after 7 weeks. So we had 1 egg left. And she took, and she's a little blessing. Win, my little daughter. She's a winner. So, yeah, we named her Win.
That's WYNN, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I just got that.
Oh, I saw that. I was like, I saw that, man. I didn't know how long you had that one for.
That's been my greatest achievement, and that's definitely like what I'm striving for now. Like she's in the gym already. She came out to Tough Show. Valentina gave her a jersey.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah, she's experiencing, like I feel like when I was younger, I didn't get to travel much. I didn't get to experience as much. And I just want to get my daughter that, So like she's 5 months old. She's been to Miami. She's been to Dallas. She's been to Vegas already. She's traveled 3 times. Like
she's experienced.
Yeah, she got a jersey signed from Valentina and a glove. So like she's gonna have some cool memories.
Good for you, man. Well, that's awesome, dude. I had a great time today. Thank you for coming on. That's it for today, everybody.
I appreciate it.
Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Cheers.